In the case of a person the person who died, if they were terminally ill, the people, especially the caregivers, they have this feeling of, and sometimes they feel guilty that they are relieved. They feel guilty for feeling relieved that the person has passed on because they don't have to take care of that person anymore. One, like I said earlier, grieving comes in waves. The emotional, the emotions involved in grieving come in waves. So 1 minute, a person may be feeling like they are okay. They may even be able to engage in a conversation and even laugh. And then the next minute they are sad and they may be weeping. So the emotions will come in waves, different, emotions within a very short span of time. So that's how the emotions, that's how the feelings will get affected, and it's normal. It's a normal process of grieving. Emotionally also, sometimes people get very conflicting feelings when they are grieving. One, and these feelings, because of their conflicting nature, they confuse them. And I'll give you an example. One, someone may feel sad that their loved one died. So they're feeling sad. Of course, you've lost a loved one. But at the same time, they may be feeling relieved that at least they're not in pain anymore, especially if they were unwell, they had been sick maybe, and they were in pain. So there is the sadness that you've lost someone, but there's also the relief that they are no longer suffering like they were before. Other feelings that come with grieving are like anger. Of course, we said sadness or sorrow. There is sometimes regret, apathy, anything. A lot of anger, regret. Sometimes people feel guilty, depending on how the person died or the circumstances around the death. That sometimes people get the feeling that maybe they could have done more. Maybe they are to blame because they didn't do as much as they feel they should have done. So there may be anger. Sometimes anger comes as a result of the person the person who died may have suffered for a long time, and people were hoping that they will actually get well, and then they die. And so sometimes people feel angry that, we did everything we could, or the person who was responsible, maybe the doctors. Anger can come as a result of many things around the death. So those are some of the other emotional feelings that, emotional experiences that someone will go through as they grieve. In the case of a person the person who died, if they were terminally ill, the people, especially the caregivers, they have this feeling of, and sometimes they feel guilty that they are relieved. They feel guilty for feeling relieved that the person has passed on because they don't have to take care of that person anymore. Caregiving is very, very, very difficult. It's a very heavy responsibility, and caregivers go through a lot of emotional weight weighing on them because of taking care of the loved ones who are terminally ill. So when a loved one who has been terminally ill, especially for a while, when they pass on, the caregivers have this feeling of course, they don't have that, that they don't have to go through that anymore. They don't have to take care. But because of that, they feel guilty for feeling relieved. And so those are some of the emotional experiences a person goes through as they grieve. How long should grief last? There is really we mentioned that normal grief usually takes about 6 months before it starts, dissipating the sadness, the sorrow. That doesn't mean that 6 months is the time that that's the time frame, or that's the span of time that someone should be grieving. There is no right, like we said, there's no right or wrong way of grieving. Grief is a very individual experience, and how one person grieves is very different from the other person. And that is why even when a family member dies, the members of that household, the members of the family, will differ in the way they grieve. There are people who go through grief very quickly as compared to their other family members. And sometimes they may feel guilty that they don't seem to be grieving as long as the others. And grieving basically depends on your relationship with the person who died. When we are talking about grief as a result of the loss of a person, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on your relationship with the person. How are you relating? How, your relationship. It also depends on your personality. It also depends on the circumstances of death. It depends on, was it a sudden death? Was it an accident? The circumstances around death also will impact on how long the grieving of these people will take. And so there is no cap to how long it should really last. But like I have said, if 6 months on you're still gripped with the emotions and the shock and those initial feelings, then you may need to seek professional help. Now, the sudden death of a loved one is obviously going to take longer to process than someone who was sick, especially if it was a long illness. When someone has been sick for a long time, there's a way, it's almost like people kind of get emotionally and mentally prepared that anything can happen. But when it is a sudden death, that one, the shock is bigger, and it takes longer to process, and it takes longer to, first of all, to accept, and then to start processing. Now, typically the loss of a person is more impactful than the loss of something. So, for instance, grieving the loss of a loved one or a person is definitely going to take longer than grieving the loss of a job, or grieving the collapse of a business, or grieving the loss of a friendship, or a breakup of a relationship. So that there's going to be a difference. And I forgot to say that people also experience grief when children leave home. So parents whose children are growing up and they reach a point where now they start leaving home, they start living on their own. There's a concept of the empty nest where parents are left alone and children move on. There are people who experience some sort of grief because life has changed. It's almost like they've obviously not lost the children, but that feeling, that experience of children being home, that togetherness, sometimes they go through a process where it can also look like grief. So how can you cope? How can we cope with grief? Because grief affects all of us. And if you haven't been affected, you know someone who is already affected or who has been affected. Now, you cope with grief, one, by accepting the loss. You accept that you have lost this person, or you have lost whatever it is that you have lost. Accepting is very, very key, because accepting now is what allows you to start the process of healing. So once you have accepted, then the next thing is that allow yourself to feel the emotions that go through you. Like, don't try to fight the emotions that you experience. If you experience sadness, it's okay to experience it. Let it, even if it comes like waves, let it come, let it wash over you. If you feel like crying, it's okay. I know there are cultures where men are not allowed to cry, and boys are trained that they should not cry. But it is very healthy to cry. It is very healthy. If you feel like you want to cry, it is very healthy to do that. There are those who feel like they need to shout, like they need to really scream. As long as you're not screaming in someone's ears, if you can just find space and let it out. So whatever emotions you feel, it's important to let it go through. It's important for you to allow it to, take its course, because if you try to block the feelings, if you try to block the emotions, they don't go away. They just seem like they are, like they are dissipating a little, but they come back stronger. So if you feel like you're angry, it's good to express that anger. It's good to, if you feel like maybe there's somewhere that there's somewhere that things went wrong, and that's why that loss happened. If you need to express that anger, it's important to do so. So allowing yourself to experience the emotions as opposed to fighting them. That's the other thing that is healthy. The other thing is, do not isolate yourself. This is not the time that you want to be alone. So find fellowship in people who care about you, family members, friends, people who are around you who care about you. Don't resist the urge to isolate yourself. Even if you generally like being alone, this is the time that you need to be around people, especially around people who care about you, people who love you, people who understand what you're going through. It is important to exercise self-care. And self-care is anything that makes you feel good, anything that makes you feel good about yourself. It can be anything. Self-care is very personal also. It's a very individual, thing. So if you enjoy reading a good book, find time to do that. If you enjoy watching a nice movie, do that. If you enjoy taking a bubble bath, if that's your thing, then do the things that you love doing, the things that make you feel good. If you enjoy cooking, then engage in that. The other thing is exercise. And by exercise, I don't necessarily mean you going to the gym, but find something to do that makes you sweat. So for instance, you can take a brisk walk, 15-30 minutes. If you like going to the gym, find something to do in form of an exercise, so that your body is not, so that your emotions you're not focused on just what has happened. You're able to relax your muscles. You're able to let your heart, beat a little faster. That is going to help you a lot with your emotions. It is also good if you can find a support group, especially people who've gone through what you've gone through, or who are going through what you are going through. Like we said about collective grief. Because that way, first of all, you feel you're not alone. Secondly, there's someone around you who may say something that's really going to encourage you. So it's good to find a support group that has gone through what you've gone through, or that has experienced the kind of loss or the grief that you are experiencing. So don't isolate yourself. And if you can find a support group, it's a good idea. Do not neglect your hobbies. Hobbies are those things that you do just for fun. Those things that you enjoy doing. They're part of who you are. Whatever it is, don't neglect those ones. Engage those ones, because they tend to make your mind relax, and they take your mind off the thoughts that are going through your mind as you think about the loss. So hobbies are going to be very, very helpful to you, whatever your hobbies are. Whatever you do as you grieve, kindly do not engage in alcohol or drugs as a form of numbing your pain. There are people who engage in an effort to take away the pain. They will go into alcohol. They will take alcohol probably more than they usually do. They may even engage in drugs just to take away the sting of that pain. But the problem with this kind of behavior is that it is counterproductive. It may take the pain a little bit for a very short time, but the outcome is not good. Actually, if you engage in it more, you may find that now you're not able to stop. And you may find that it is actually prolonging your grief, because every time it wears off, then you remember the loss. You remember even why you took it. So The problem with the drugs and alcohol is that you may find yourself actually getting addicted or getting, dependent on it. So avoid taking drugs and alcohol as a form of taking away the pain that you're going through. Now, then there's also the grief counseling. Grief counseling is where and especially if you feel you're not doing okay, especially if you feel time is moving on and I'm really not really seeing any improvement, I'm not seeing any changes. It may not necessarily be complicated grief, but you may still feel I am not doing okay. Look for a grief counselor who will be able to help you, explore your emotions, see what is it that is causing you to feel this way. Are there other things going on with you or were going on with you before the loss that are complicating now your process or your healing journey? So a grief counselor is going to help you to explore your emotions, give you tools to be able to help you deal with the grief. They'll also be able to help you with any other issues that are complicating, your healing process. If you're depressed or if you develop depression, a medical doctor is also going to help you, give you some medication or medicines that are going to help you lift off the depression as you continue to grieve, as you continue the healing journey. It's a process, so it's not going to happen overnight, but with the right help, the journey becomes a little easier. Now, how do you know when to get help? Because not everybody needs to go for grief counseling. Not everybody may need to go for professional help. But how do you know that you actually need professional help? One, if after 6 months you're still feeling the same way you did, you're weeping every day, you're still feeling the same way you felt the first few days after 6 months. So if that's the case, you need professional help. Also, if you're not able to carry on your everyday routine, if you're not able to function the way you used to, then you may need to seek professional help. Now, how can you may not be the person grieving, you may not be the one who has experienced the loss, but someone close to you, maybe a family member or a friend or a neighbor or a colleague. How can you help someone who is grieving? One, just be available. Let them know you're available. Let them know whatever it is you need, I'm here. So be available for them, whatever that means to them. The other thing is be there for them when they need help. Like, do they need to talk? Do they need just someone sitting with them? So let them know that. Be there for them. Let them not be looking for people to try and help them. Find ways to support the person. And there are very many ways that you can be able to engage in helping someone. If it's a neighbor or a family member, you can do anything around the house. You can cook meals for them. You can run errands. You can do shopping for them because they're not able to do it. Do they have school-going children who may need picking or dropping? Those are some of the things that you can do to help them, to support them. Do they need the house cleaned, or are they the ones who usually clean their house? You can do that for them. Anything that involves giving them the support that they need during that time. The other thing is be ready to listen if they need to talk, if they want to talk. Sometimes people may not necessarily want to talk, but there are times when they may feel they need to talk. Again, people are different. There are people who feel they want to talk. If that's the case, then let them know that you're there and that you are ready to listen to them. That's one way of supporting them. Let them know if they need to talk about it or about anything, you're there and you're quietly going to listen to them, not necessarily to say much, but just to be there if they need to talk. The other thing is just to affirm their feelings. Let them do not belittle or do not downplay their feelings. Don't be tempted to feel like or to say things that would make them feel like you don't really understand their pain. Like they shouldn't be, you know, it's been, this person was not even close, or it was the loss of something like a pet, and you feel maybe because you don't like pets, maybe you're tempted to wonder why are they behaving that way. So just affirm their feelings. As much as you may not necessarily know exactly how they feel, just let them understand that you understand that they are in pain. So be there for them. Try as much as possible to do what it is that you can do to support them, to ensure that they're not alone. And if they need time alone, then you also respect that. So those are some of the things that you can do to be able to support someone who is going through grief. So a few things to remember. We've talked about the types of grief. We've talked about some of the symptoms that a person goes through, what you can do to help someone, what you need to look out for in order to look for, in order to seek professional help. So a few things to remember. One, that grief is a natural response to loss. And loss can be anything. Loss can be a loss of a pet, loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of a relationship, anything. As long as it's a loss and something that was close to you, you will grieve and grieve. So that is a natural response to loss. People grieve differently also. So don't compare yourself to other people. There is no right or wrong way of grieving. There are different types of grief, as we have seen. And then it's important to remember that help is available in case you feel that you need help. But it's also important to remember that eventually the pain eases off. At first you will feel very strongly. It's very heavy. It's very deep. But with time, it goes away slowly. And with time, you will be able to get over the pain. The pain will go. You will not forget. You will not necessarily forget the person or the people or the things that you lost, but the pain will go. So that's the important thing. So if you feel like someone, yourself or someone you know, is not doing well, then it's important to seek professional help so that you're able to be assisted to go through the healing more easily than if you're just alone. So that's about grief. That's about loss and grief. And we hope that some of the things we have shared will be able to help you or help someone close to you. So thank you very much, and we shall see you on the next video.